Dr. Ofer Edelstein, welcome to Silver Sage Magazine. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
To you from Israel. Here in the US, we're calling from the Bethlehem area, and it's 9:15 in the morning. So I'm assuming it's in the afternoon for you.
Yeah, it's about 4 and something here, p.m.
Okay. So tell me about the recent research that you did with one of your colleagues. I'm looking over here. Band Winterstein and yourself did some research on caregivers.
Yes.
Ultra Orthodox population.
And we should mention Professor Bachner too. Is the third one to participate in this study.
Okay. So the three of you did research with the Ultra Orthodox Jews. Tell me about your research and what you found.
Well, let's begin with the entire experience. It was fascinating for us as we are not Ultra Orthodox. Actually, we are not religious at all, the three of us. So it's like it was an anthropological experience for us too.
So why did you pick this population then?
Because at that time I was working with the Ultra Orthodox population. I was lecturing in a college in Israel, designated to the Ultra Orthodox community, preparing them to be social workers.
Okay, so your students got the standardized questions that you wanted them to ask the population. And then those students went to the Ultra Orthodox communities of which they belonged, and they asked their parents, their aunts, their uncles, their grandparents, whomever, the standard questions.
Yes, we should note that this one was a convenience sample. It's not randomized in any way.
Okay.
And there are some implications for that on our conclusion too. However, we were the first to do it in Israel, and I think that we were the first to do it worldwide too.
It's interesting that you used a convenience sample, and I say that because you picked a very specific population based on the convenience sample, which makes total sense. But with the results that you got, could you extrapolate the information and the results and conclusions for a larger population?
Well, we can do it maybe on the community in Israel. I'm not sure about the community in the United States, because there are differences between the Orthodox here and in the United States.
Absolutely. So give me an example of some of the questions, the standardized questions that you asked the students to ask the caregivers.
Yes, so we were very interested in the social support component. We know that social support in everywhere, and it is a cross-cultural thing to say that social support is a very, very important factor. It's actually a protective factor against burden of care, anxiety, depression, and we know that it's very important. And we wanted to know how much is it in the Ultra Orthodox community. We asked about external locus of control too, as we know that religious people might be on God's side and less on the internal locus of control. But locus of control and social support were the predictors for the depression, yes.
Okay. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
We are trying to understand as the Ultra Orthodox community, they are known for their social support. Actually, they are known for the mutual support system in the Ultra Orthodox community. As they are relying on that social support and not on governmental support, at least in Israel.
Correct.
We try to measure it because no one has measured it before. And it was as in the literature saying that if somebody has a very strong social support, he might have less depression and in the other studies, less anxiety, which is a good is a good thing to know where you are approaching somebody from the ultra Orthodox community to treat him for depression or for burden of care.
Right. And this seems to be sort of a normalized thing throughout the world, that not just for in Israel, but all over the world. It would seem to be a correlation that made sense all over the world. You know, no matter where you live, if you have a greater sense of social support, you're going to have less depression, less anxiety, etc.
Of course, and we know it about Christians in the United States, same pattern, and
Mm-hmm.
in Jews in Israel too, regardless if they are religious or not religious,
Mm-hmm.
the same pattern goes, and it's something that we know, but no one, in our case, measure it before, as for the caregivers of frail elders. And that's the news from this study.
What was the conclusions and the recommendations that you had after finding this correlation between social supports,
Yeah,
control, and caregiving?
so if I have to summarize the entire conclusions here, because we had several, um, the main implication from this study, in our opinion, is that the government has to do some more efforts in order to make the social support system, governmental and non-governmental,
Mm-hmm.
stronger, as they're relying on it and might rely even more than other populations. So that was the main implication on our side for this community.
And
Um,
how would you propose that the government would do that? Because it's one thing, like here in the United States, we have the Department of Aging, and they put
yeah,
a plethora of different supports, both financial, social, more social services, not
yeah.
social, but social service supports. So how would you propose that the government would aid in the social supports of the aging population?
So there are two main things that we can think about.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is the formal support, which you were saying at the beginning of your sentence. As for that, we recommended that the government would come up or plan or develop new services for the ultra-Orthodox community,
Mm-hmm.
designated to their unique needs, speaking their language,
Mm-hmm.
understanding their more than they do now. Even for hotlines which are designated to the ultra-Orthodox community. Some of them don't speak enough Hebrew. They speak Yiddish.
Okay.
Some of them, not all of them. Some of them
Some of
came.
them meaning the community members or the hotline,
No. The community members.
the community members.
Yes.
Okay.
So this one should be designated to the ultra-Orthodox community in order to come up with help if somebody needs help.
Mm-hmm.
That's on the formal side. As for the informal side, um, something related with self-support groups, which are guided by professional social workers, nurses, that has to be qualified and knowledgeable about the needs of the elders, and not some, they have to know their business in order to help them and to help them a lot.
So let me interrupt for a second. In those professionals, I'm gonna extrapolate both the smaller and the larger communities. The ultra Orthodox community, are they open to professional services? And is the larger community in Israel open to those kinds of professional services, psychological, social work, etc.?
Well, we know that on the last recent years, we have a trend in Israel that the ultra-Orthodox community are opening to get some help from the government and else from organizations which are not government, And there is a trend because they have a lot of needs, unmet needs, and they are trying to get some help. However, as they are very strict on their lifestyle, they would prefer to do it in a way that will suit their own lifestyle. And
Mm-hmm.
we understand that as researchers, and we can even recommend on that. And that's exactly what we did. Um, I have to say that the study that we are talking about is only 1/3 of the other researches that we made with this population. So in one, we try to predict the depression, and on one, the burden of care. And in one, we try to understand the concept of burden of care among the ultra Orthodox community in Israel. So I'm trying to gather the recommendation from this and that, and to come up with an idea to facilitate to you.
Okay. And what was the burden of care? Did the ultra Orthodox communities feel that they had a large burden of care to help with their elders, or did they feel that they weren't burdened with that responsibility?
Okay, so that was a fascinating anthropological experience for us. Why? The burden of care. One of the studies of the burden of care was qualitative, which means that we went with semi-structures questionnaire to get the ideas from the communities.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in most cases, they wouldn't say that they are burdened. They wouldn't say the word burden, not even in Hebrew.
Is that because they didn't want to expose that?
No.
The whole concept of privacy and pride?
No, it's a different concept because you are commanded by the Ten Commandments to honor your parents, and you are promised to be rewarded on later life too.
Okay.
So that's the reward. However, if you are not going to do it, you might be, how to say it, maybe penalized by your own society.
Oh.
So you have to do it, and this is just one source for the burden. There are high expectations from the caregivers to give care, to take care.
It's not really a choice. It's expected from their community and their religion.
No, it's not a choice. It's not a free choice in any way.
Right.
Yes. So you are kind of obligated to do it. And if you are doing it, so you are on the right side. If you're not, it's a bit complicated now. It's getting complicated. Yes.
Did you ever get a sense? Did the students who did the research and gather the information and provide that to you all, the three of you, did they ever give you the sense that deep inside the participants did feel a sense of negative feelings towards the obligation that they had, or was something it is what it is and you don't think about it, you just do?
Okay, so it is what it is, and it is not, and it is like, in some ways, it's a divine test that you have to be, that you have to be.
I might fail that divine test if it was me.
Well, I'm not sure, but they are saying, they are clearly viewing it as a divine test and a mission to do it. Mm-hmm. And very gratitude about it too. We have to say that's the positive side. There is a great gratitude in order to
it's a mitzvah.
Yes, it's a great mitzvah, actually. It's a
great mitzvah. They take care of their parents, and then eventually their children will take care of them, and it's passed on from generation to generation. It's a good deed. It's a good thing that this is part of their culture.
Yes, but whether you call it a mitzvah or not, we know that the Afro-Americans in the United States, there are similar patterns between those communities too. Mm-hmm. As they feel not obligated, but it's something natural that you have to take care of your parents.
What populations are you referring to in the US that have that same sense of not obligation, but cultural?
Cultural. Yes, so the African Americans,
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, uh, Latinos too.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And are you going to eventually extrapolate your research and do those other populations?
in order to do that, I have to come to the United States, which
That's correct.
I will be very happy to do. Um, those are the main conclusions. Um,
Interesting.
on the qualitative study, we
Mm-hmm.
got very explicitly saying that they would like to have hotlines designated to the ultra Orthodox community. No, actually, we asked them, what kind of
Oh,
services do you think that you need that you don't have now?
but you didn't prompt them,
No, we didn't. It
but they
just
came up with that.
came up from their side.
Wow, interesting.
Yes, yes. Uh,
In Israel, what other hotlines do you have that they would have been aware of to say that's something that we want for this community specifically to help with this issue? Do they have like suicide hotlines, sexual
yeah.
assault hotlines?
We have like a national SOS line
Okay.
for any kind of SOS matter. I'm
Okay.
talking about the elders now. Um,
That's
uh,
the elder population has
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
SOS
yeah.
hotline.
I'm,
Oh,
I'm
interesting.
referring I'm referring to the elders, and we have
Okay.
reports for the general population, which can deal issues coming from the elder population. However, we have a specific one for the elder population. Um,
So So what would happen in the SOS hotline? So if I live in the ultra Orthodox community and I'm an elder, or just I'm assuming in Israel and I'm an elder, and I call the SOS hotline, what am I calling for? Give me an example.
okay, so it might be that, this one for the ultra Orthodox hotline or for the general one? Which one are you referring to?
Either or. So let's do
Okay.
the general
Okay.
first, and then we'll do the ultra Orthodox.
Okay, so for the general one, if your parents got lost because he is demented, you
Okay.
can call the hotline. They will call the police. You can call the police directly. It's the same. Um, um, and we have it's not an SOS, but we have another hotline for legal rights. Um,
Okay.
in order to extract all the rights that the elders have in Israel. Um, as for the ultra Orthodox community, they can use the general hotline. There are certain words that you don't use with ultra Orthodox, uh, uh, even not me.
What do you mean? Certain words that you don't use with that community? Like, what are you referring to exactly?
You have to be very sensitive. You have to be
Mhm.
cultural sensitive, actually.
Absolutely.
The other thing is that in some cases, the ultra Orthodox community would prefer not to have the police inside and to solve issues with the rabbis and not
Mhm.
with the intervene of the police or the social worker.
Like fascinating research, and your team came up with some good data and information that is usable and that we can extrapolate and do some more. What's the next step for your team?
Okay, so actually, the three of us, with other researchers, we are coming up with new research proposal now, not on the ultra Orthodox community, but for immigrants. That's our next step. Immigrants
Immigrants into the
in is to
immigrants
to
into
Israel, to Israel.
Okay. Let me go back to the study, the original study we were talking about with the ultra Orthodox and with the social constructs and the caregiving, etc. What was your hypothesis in that original study? What were you all thinking that was going to happen? What were you trying to prove or disprove in that?
Actually, we believe that we will find some kind of patterns, which is already in the literature.
Mm-hmm.
And we were not that off target. It was okay. That's the same patterns that we have found about the correlations, um, except for the external control, which is high. It's on the high end on the ultra orthodox community.
Sure.
The most interesting, as for me, the finding is that the humanity, I guess, that everywhere are behaving in somewhat the same pattern. Okay, there are no huge surprises in those studies, in our
Right.
studies. However, we have another support for the very important, crucial, I can say, role that social support has in order to alleviate some of the burden, some of the depression, and the anxiety that most caregivers experience.
Right.
So it is about social support, and it is about, I didn't mention the self-rated health that is a predictor for the burden of care.
The self-rated what?
Health, health.
Health. Okay, health.
The self-rated health. Now we can target others, caregivers that are not healthy enough. If they are not healthy enough and they are going to take care of their own parents, they might be even more
At risk.
Yes, of course.
Sure, absolutely. For everything, more at risk for depression, anxiety,
correct,
stress,
correct.
And not feeling good about the whole process.
Mortality, morbidity, yes, of course. And we have to target those factors too when we are questioning as social workers, psychologists, nurses, physicians, of course. So we have to understand the entire picture, the entire complex. And it is a very complex picture. It's not just about the elder, which is very sick. There is the caregiver too that is in the middle of the entire situation and might have more responsibilities for his own children, or for him, for his spouse.
Right.
And there is the parents too. In the Ultra Orthodox community, it might be even more complicated, as in, at least in Israel. If on the average in Israel we have 2-point-something children, they have 6-point-something children.
But oftentimes the caregiving responsibilities often fall on the oldest female and of the siblings. Israel?
That's correct. And there is a saying in Hebrew like that, something like, I would try to translate it back to English, saying that one mother can raise up 10 children, but 10 children cannot take care of one mother.
And how do you say that in Hebrew?
אמא אחת יכולה לטפל ב10 ילדים, אבל 10 ילדים לא יכולים לטפל באמא אחת. The thing is that you are right. In most cases, there is only one primary caregiver. The others are secondary caregivers. And as secondary, they will have less responsibility. They might live remotely from the parents. They might be less favorite on the parent side. A lot of reasons.
Right.
And you are correct. In most cases, it will be the daughter and not the son. And it doesn't have to be the eldest one.
Right. What happens to the psyche of those siblings who aren't fulfilling that cultural, I want to say obligation, but that cultural expectation? Is there something that's going on then with them? And do they have more guilt and more depression and whatnot, not helping with the parents?
Well, if to be frank, I don't know. As we investigated the primary caregivers and not the secondary caregivers.
Maybe that's research number 376 you have to follow up with.
Well, that's an excellent idea. to research the secondary caregivers.
Because I think there's often a lot of anger and resentment from the primary caregiver, and then there's a lot of guilt and relief. And I'm talking from an educational psychologist perspective, a lot of, relief, but guilt for the other siblings who can't or choose not to or aren't able to help, whether it's for geographic location or whatever their reasoning is.
Well, we know that there is no vacuum in this. Somebody will take the role of being primary caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
And now we can discuss the entire family structure and how did you came to be the primary one and not the secondary one. And you're right. In some cases, a lot of anger and
Mm-hmm.
guilt. And in some cases, it's okay. Somebody feels more close to the parents or more obligated to these parents, and the others less.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it a lot as I was working as a social worker in a major hospital in Israel. And I guess that every psychologist or a social worker and nurses too see it a lot when they are confronting the entire structure of family and caregiving.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody is going to be the caregiver,
Right.
consensually or not.
Right. Because I think there's a lot of responsibility that falls and they have to make decisions and have to happen. But as we're talking, I thought about another research project, which is greater, Catholic guilt or Jewish guilt?
Ooh, that's a very interesting. That's a good one.
See, that's what happens when you talk about research. Is more research comes out like, oh, that's a good idea. And what about that? And that's another.
I like the idea, but I think that on this issue matter, I think that they might be equal.
Okay, well, we don't know, Ofer, until we do the research.
We don't know yet, but I like it a lot, and I have to call my friends to
get some up-and-coming PhD student and have them do this research and get back to me. We'll put it on Silver Sage magazine.
You know what? It's an excellent idea. I really mean it. It's an excellent.
I know it is. I'm full of good ideas.
Yeah.
Because caregiving is a global phenomenon, and it's affecting everybody. And so, it's something that we really highlight. It has its very own specific column in our magazine because it is such a big deal. And as our population ages, and as more and more of our adults are caring for older adults, it's an
issue, and it's a major one, and it's all over the world. It's not just in Israel or the States. Yes, the world is indeed going old.
Right. Let me finish by asking you, first of all, how old are you?
I'm almost 44.
Okay, so you're a Silver Sager. We call you a Silver Sager. You're over the age of 40. So so the last question I have for you, doing this project, I'm assuming your parents are at least 60 something.
Yeah, almost 70, yes.
Okay, so in doing this project as a Silver Sager, there had to be some resonance in your own mind and spirit, thinking, where am I on this spectrum and the continuum of caring for my parents? And what did it made you think about as someone who's going to eventually be dealing with caregiving?
Well, actually, I'm already taking care of my dad.
Okay.
Which he developed a minor Parkinson's disease. It's not severe, but there are many challenges with this disease, and I'm the eldest one in the family too.
Do you have a sister?
No.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you're the eldest and no siblings that are sisters?
No. I have two brothers, and I live about 100 miles away from my parents, something like that.
So it's a couple hours.
It's it's like 2 hours and something. Yes.
Right.
And in my case, I'm not the primary caregiver.
Oh,
My mom is.
okay.
Um,
For now.
yes. And it makes you think about it. Yes. But my mom is doing the
The
massive
primary.
work. Yes, and with the help of my brothers too. Um, and yes, there is I would prefer to be more with them, but I can't as I'm 100 miles away. And
But your research is so important, and hopefully that will help hundreds and thousands of caregivers around the world.
well, I hope I really with my partners. I have to mention them all the time because they made an excellent work with me, with Professor Bachner and Dr. Van Winterstein. Yes, we are trying to do the best on the research side. Yes,
Well, Dr. Ofer Edelstein, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you joining Silver Sage Magazine. Myself, Tracy Hill, as the founder and publisher of the magazine. I really appreciate your time. Great work. You have a lot more work to do ahead of you. Don't forget the Catholic and Jewish guilt.
yeah.
Don't forget the research on secondary siblings and the guilt and all that they go through. So you have other research that you have coming down the pike, and I wish you all the best in your research.
Thank you so much for this great opportunity to present my work and for this nice chat. And I really hope to be here soon
I
enough.
hope you will too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.